Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the quiet stillness of the late afternoon, a vibrant red disrupted the peace. The silken fabric, a striking contrast to the wooden floors, spilled from an unzipped corner of an abandoned gym bag, unfurling like a blossom in the room's warm glow. The breath left an unseen observer's lungs in a soft rush, the only sound breaking the silence. The room held its breath, waiting for the inevitable. "What?" a woman's voice began, trailing off as she took in the unexpected sight. Clara, her hands clutching a familiar laundry bag, stood motionless, as if caught in a spell. A lifetime of shared memories flashed before her eyes, and yet this mysterious dress was an enigma. As if in slow motion, Clara's gaze locked onto the man in the room, his face a mask of guilt and surprise. Her mind raced, searching for an answer, a justification. It was clearly too large for her petite frame. "This isn't mine," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "And I'm guessing it's not a gift for me either, considering it's about 4 sizes too big." Gianni's throat constricted. How many nights had he imagined this conversation? How many scenarios had he played through his mind? None of them prepared him for the reality of standing before his wife, watching her fingers trace the delicate beadwork along the gown's sweetheart neckline. "How long?" Clara asked, still examining the dress with an unreadable expression. "Since before we met," Gianni admitted, his voice barely audible. "I never wanted you to find out like this." Clara carefully laid the dress across their bed and crossed her arms. "Did you ever plan on telling me at all?" The truth stung as it escaped his lips. "No." The silence that followed seemed to stretch into eternity. Outside, a car door slammed. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower droned. Inside their bedroom, the sanctuary of their 15-year marriage, time stood suspended. "There's more, isn't there?" Clara's question wasn't really a question. Gianni nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "Show me." His heart hammered against his ribs as he moved toward their walk-in closet. With trembling hands, he slid aside his row of business suits and reached for the hidden panel he'd installed years ago. The false wall swung open, revealing his other self, his private collection meticulously organized by color and occasion. Clara's eyes widened as she took in the array of dresses, blouses, skirts, and accessories. Her hand covered her mouth. "All these years," she whispered. "All these years. And I never knew." "I never wanted to hurt you," Gianni said, hearing the inadequacy of his words even as he spoke them. Clara ran her fingers along a lavender pencil skirt, then touched a cream silk blouse hanging beside it. "This is beautiful craftsmanship," she observed, her voice distant and professional. Her background in fashion design couldn't help but notice the quality of the garments. "They're my favorites," Gianni admitted. "The lavender and cream." Clara turned to face him, her expression hardening from shock into something more resolute. "I need you to understand something, Gianni. I'm hurt, not by what you like to wear, but by 15 years of lies." She moved to the window, staring out at their manicured suburban lawn. "I've always believed we told each other everything. Now I discover that the person I've shared my bed with for a decade and a half has been keeping an entire identity from me." "It's not like that," Gianni protested. "It's just clothes! It's not—" "Don't!" Clara raised her hand, cutting him off. Don't minimize this. These aren't just clothes to you, or you wouldn't have gone to such lengths to hide them. This is clearly important to you, important enough to build a secret compartment in our shared closet. She was right, of course. Clara had always been perceptive, one of the qualities that had drawn him to her when they'd met at a gallery opening 16 years ago. Do you have a name? She asked suddenly. When you're dressed. The question caught him off guard. Judith, he replied, surprised by how easily it slipped out after years of only whispering it in private. Clara nodded slowly, absorbing this new information. Judith, she repeated, testing the name. And how often does Judith want to exist in the world? More than I've allowed, Gianni admitted. Clara walked back to the bed where the red gown still lay. She lifted it again, studying its craftsmanship with more deliberate attention. This is exquisite. Have you ever worn it outside this house? No, never outside. But you want to. Again, not really a question. Gianni, who in this moment felt caught between two identities, closed his eyes. Yes. The confession hung in the air, irretrievable. Clara carefully folded the gown and placed it on the bed. Her movements were methodical, buying time as she processed. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. I've come to a decision. I won't live with secrets anymore, Gianni. Neither should you. She squared her shoulders. Either Judith becomes a part of our lives, out in the open, or I want a divorce. The ultimatum hit like a physical blow. Clara, please! No, she interrupted. I mean it. I won't spend another 15 years with someone who's hiding their true self. It's not fair to either of us. She gestured toward the closet. If this is who you are, then be that person, but I won't participate in any more deception. Gianni sank onto the edge of the bed, the weight of the moment overwhelming him. You'd really divorce me over this? I'd divorce you for not trusting me enough to share your life, your real life, with me. There's a difference. Clara's expression softened slightly. But I'm not saying I want to divorce you. I'm saying I want to know my spouse. All of my spouse. She checked her watch. We have dinner reservations at Marcello's at 8. That gives you 3 hours. 3 hours for what? To decide who's coming to dinner with me tonight. Gianni or Judith. Clara walked to the door, then paused. And Gianni? If it's Judith, I expect her to look her absolute best. That red gown would be appropriate for Marcello's, don't you think? With that, she closed the door behind her, leaving Gianni alone with a choice he'd never expected to make. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of emotions. Gianni paced the bedroom, alternating between panic and a strange, unexpected sense of relief. The secret was out. The worst had happened. And yet, the world hadn't ended. Clara hadn't immediately packed her bags and left. She'd given him a choice. But what a choice! The red gown seemed to mock him from its place on the bed. He'd purchased it 6 months ago during a business trip to Milan, unable to resist its perfect draping and subtle beadwork. He'd hidden it carefully among his luggage, smuggling it home like contraband. Now it represented a crossroads in his life. At the 2-hour mark, he found himself standing before the bathroom mirror, his face half covered in foundation. He hadn't made a conscious decision to prepare, yet here he was, muscle memory guiding his hands through the familiar routine. 30 minutes later, he stood before the full-length mirror, hardly recognizing himself. The red gown fit perfectly, accentuating curves he'd carefully cultivated through targeted exercise over the years. His blonde hair, which he'd kept slightly longer than most men his age, had been styled into a feminine bob that softened his features. The makeup was subtle, but effective, enhancing rather than masking. Judith stared back at him from the mirror, more real than she'd ever been before. A gentle knock at the bedroom door made his heart leap to his throat. "It's time!" Clara called through the door. "Are you ready?" Was he ready? Could anyone be ready for such a moment? "I'm ready," Judith answered, her voice pitched slightly higher than Gianni's, a technique practiced in solitude for years. The door opened slowly, and Clara stood in the threshold, elegant in a black cocktail dress, her dark hair swept up in a chignon. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in the figure before her. "Judith," she said softly, and something in her expression shifted. "You look beautiful." The word hung between them, unexpected and transformative. Clara stepped forward, inspecting her spouse with the critical eye of someone who understood fashion. "The earrings aren't quite right with the neckline," she said, moving to her jewelry box. "Try these instead." She handed over a pair of diamond drops that caught the light as Judith fastened them to her ears. "Better," Clara nodded. "Do you have an appropriate coat? It's getting chilly in the evenings now." Judith shook her head, amazed at the turn the conversation had taken. "You can borrow my black wrap," Clara decided, moving back toward the closet. "It'll complement the gown nicely." As Clara draped the soft cashmere wrap around Judith's shoulders, their eyes met in the mirror. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that whatever happened next, they were stepping into it together. "Our reservation is in 20 minutes, Clara said, checking her watch. "Are you ready for this?" The question encompassed so much more than just dinner. "I don't know," Judith answered honestly. "But I think I've been waiting for it my entire life." Clara's lips curved into a small smile. "Then let's not be late." The walk to the car felt like traversing another world. Each step in the elegant heels required concentration, but there was also a rightness to the feeling that Judith had never experienced during her private dress-up sessions. This was real. This was happening. And somehow, Clara was beside her, car keys in hand, acting as if they'd done this 100 times before. "I'll drive," Clara said, opening the passenger door for Judith. "You focus on not wrinkling that gorgeous gown." The drive to Marcello's passed in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Judith watched the familiar streets of their neighborhood slide by, wondering how many of their neighbors might be at the restaurant tonight. Marcello's was the finest dining establishment in their small suburb, a place where local business leaders and socialites gathered regularly. "We can still turn around," Clara said suddenly, seeming to read her thoughts. "If you're not ready." Judith considered this escape route for a moment, then shook her head. "No, I want this." Clara nodded, making the final turn into the restaurant's parking lot. "Then remember, chin up, back straight, and own every step. No one questions those who act like they belong." It was advice Clara had given many times over the years before important business functions or social events. Gianni had always appreciated her confidence. Now, Judith clung to it like a lifeline. The maitre d' greeted them with professional courtesy. "Mrs. Moretti, your table is ready. Will Mr. Moretti be joining you this evening?" Judith felt her pulse quicken, but Clara smoothly interjected. "This is my spouse Judith. We're celebrating tonight." The maitre d' barely missed a beat.
Of course! Right this way, ladies.
Their table was set in a quiet corner with a view of the garden. As they were seated, Judith noticed a few curious glances from nearby diners, but no one stared outright. Whether it was respect for privacy or simple good manners, she felt a tension begin to ease from her shoulders. "Wine?" Clara suggested, opening the menu. "I think a good Barolo would complement both our meals." "You choose," Judith replied, still marveling at the surreal quality of the moment. Here she was, sitting in public in a gorgeous red gown, being addressed as Judith, with her wife of 15 years, acting as if everything was perfectly normal. When the sommelier approached, Clara ordered with her usual confidence. After he departed, she leaned forward slightly. "You haven't looked at your menu," she observed. "I'm not very hungry."
Understandable, but you should eat something. The risotto here is excellent. Light but satisfying.
Judith nodded, closing her menu.
Risotto it is.
Clara studied her across the table. "You seem different." "I'm wearing an evening gown in public for the first time in my life. Of course I seem different." "That's not what I mean." Clara tilted her head. "There's something about your posture, your expressions. You're more relaxed, even through the nervousness." Judith hadn't realized it until Clara pointed it out, but there was truth to the observation. Despite the anxiety of public exposure, something within her had settled, like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. "I've spent so much energy hiding," Judith said softly. "Maybe it's just a relief not to be doing that anymore. At least for tonight." Their wine arrived, followed shortly by their food. The conversation flowed more easily as the meal progressed. They discussed trivial matters, a new exhibit at the gallery where Clara worked, an upcoming business trip Gianni had scheduled. "Will you go as Gianni or Judith?" Clara asked when the trip came up. The question brought reality crashing back. "I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. Tonight is already more than I ever expected." Clara sipped her wine thoughtfully. "We need to discuss what happens after tonight. This doesn't just disappear when we go home." "I know." Judith adjusted her wrap. "But can we just have this evening first, before we tackle the rest of our lives?" Clara reached across the table and took Judith's hand. Her wedding ring caught the candlelight, a reminder of the vows they'd made to each other. "Of course, but promise me something?" "Anything. No more secrets between us. Whatever comes next, we face it honestly." Judith squeezed her hand. "I promise." The rest of the evening passed with a dreamlike quality. They declined dessert, but lingered over espresso, neither quite ready to break the spell of the evening. When they finally left, the cool night air was refreshing after the warmth of the restaurant. In the car, Clara turned to Judith before starting the engine. "Well, how does it feel to have had your first public dinner as yourself?" The question was simple, but profound. Judith considered it carefully. "It feels like the first real breath after years of holding it in," she finally answered. "Terrifying, but necessary." Clara nodded, seeming to understand. She drove them home in comfortable silence, the evening settling around them like a shared secret, only it wasn't a secret anymore. At home, in the sanctuary of their bedroom, the inevitable conversation could no longer be postponed. Clara kicked off her heels and sat cross-legged on the bed, watching as Judith carefully removed her earrings. "We need to talk about what happens tomorrow," Clara said. "And the day after that." Judith turned from the mirror. "I know. Do you want to continue living as Judith? The directness of the question was startling. I don't know if I can. That wasn't my question, Clara pointed out gently. I asked if you want to. Judith sat on the edge of the bed, the red gown pooling around her. Yes, at least sometimes. Maybe more than sometimes. Clara nodded, absorbing this. Then that's what we'll work toward. Just like that? Judith couldn't believe it could be so simple after years of internal struggle. Nothing worth having comes just like that, and you know it. Clara's tone was practical. This will be complicated. There will be difficult conversations, adjustments, possibly some painful moments. But if this is who you truly are, then helping you live authentically matters more to me than what anyone else might think. Why? Judith had to ask. Most women would have filed for divorce the moment they found that gown. Clara considered this. Maybe I'm not most women, or maybe I just realize I'd rather have a happy spouse than an estranged one. She sighed. I won't pretend this is easy for me, Judith. I have my own adjustments to make, but I married you for better or worse, and I meant those vows. Even though you didn't know about this part of me, I knew I loved you. The rest is just learning more about who I love. Clara unclasped her necklace and set it on the nightstand. So, let's be practical. Tomorrow is Sunday. We have no obligations. What do you want to do? The question was both mundane and monumental. Judith thought for a moment. I'd like to wear my lavender skirt and cream blouse, the ones you noticed earlier. Maybe we could have brunch at home, talk more about what this means for us? Clara nodded. That seems reasonable. And after brunch? I don't know, Judith admitted. I never thought I'd get this far. Then we'll figure it out together. Clara stood and moved behind Judith. Now, let me help you with the zipper on this gorgeous gown before you wrinkle it beyond repair. As Clara's fingers worked the delicate zipper, Judith felt a wave of emotion wash over her. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Probably not, Clara agreed, with a small smile in her voice. But you have me anyway. The following morning, Judith woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom curtains and the scent of coffee wafting from the kitchen. For a disoriented moment, she thought the previous night had been a dream. Then she noticed the red gown hanging carefully on the closet door, and reality came flooding back. She sat up, running a hand through her blonde hair. Today was the first day of whatever came next. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. After a quick shower, she stood before the open closet, eyeing the lavender pencil skirt and cream silk blouse she'd mentioned the night before. Her fingers trembled slightly as she removed them from their hangers. This planned dressing felt different from her furtive sessions in the past. More significant, more permanent, somehow. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, Clara was in the kitchen arranging freshly cut fruit on 2 plates beside steaming mugs of coffee. Good morning, Clara said, looking up. Her gaze traveled from Judith's carefully styled hair to the tasteful outfit and matching low heels. The lavender really suits you. Thank you. Judith felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. I made frittata, Clara said, gesturing toward the oven. It should be ready in about 5 minutes. The domesticity of the scene was surreal after the emotional intensity of the previous night. Judith moved to help set the table, their familiar Sunday routine continuing, despite everything that had changed. Over brunch, they began the difficult conversation about the future. I've been thinking, Clara said, spreading jam on a piece of toast. Perhaps we should consider this a transition period. You can be Judith at home while we figure out the next steps." "And outside the home?" Judith asked. Clara considered this. "That's more complicated. Your job, our friends, your parents. My parents would never understand," Judith said immediately. "They barely approved of my longer hair for the past few years." "Maybe, maybe not. People can surprise you." Clara sipped her coffee. "But we don't need to tackle everything at once. Let's start with what feels manageable." "Like what?" "Like shopping," Clara suggested. "Your hidden collection is impressive, but if Judith is going to be around more often, she'll need a proper wardrobe. Not just occasion pieces, but everyday clothes." The prospect of shopping openly for women's clothing was both thrilling and daunting. "Would you come with me?" "Of course." Clara reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "We can start with some boutiques in the city where we don't know anyone, if that would make you more comfortable." "And what do we tell people here? Our neighbors? Our friends?" Clara set down her coffee cup. "The truth, eventually, but at your pace, not because of pressure from others or me." The conversation continued throughout the day, weaving between practical considerations and deeper emotional territory. By evening, they had outlined a tentative plan. Judith would begin living at home full-time while they gradually expanded her comfort zone to more public settings. Clara would help with wardrobe, makeup tips, and navigating the social aspects of the transition. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm to their life together. Judith worked from home more frequently, gradually growing accustomed to being herself throughout the day. Clara proved to be an invaluable guide, offering advice on everything from walking in heels to applying makeup efficiently. "No, blend more at the jawline," Clara instructed one evening, watching Judith apply foundation. "You want a seamless transition." "It's harder than it looks," Judith grumbled, but followed the advice. "Beauty is pain, darling," Clara quipped, then grew more serious. "But it gets easier with practice. You should have seen my makeup disasters in college." Their first shopping expedition took them to an upscale boutique in the city, where Clara had called ahead to ensure a private appointment. The saleswoman, Elise, was professional and kind, treating Judith with the same courtesy she showed Clara. "I think we should focus on classic pieces that you can mix and match," Clara suggested as they browsed. "Quality over quantity." By the end of the afternoon, Judith had acquired several new outfits that fit properly and flattered her figure far better than the pieces she'd purchased hastily online over the years. "How does it feel?" Clara asked as they loaded the shopping bags into the car. "Liberating," Judith answered honestly. "And surreal. I keep waiting for someone to stop us, to say I don't belong in these spaces." "You belong wherever you choose to be," Clara said firmly. "Remember that." There were difficult moments, too. The first time they ran into a neighbor while Judith was retrieving the mail resulted in visible confusion and awkward questions. Clara smoothly intervened, explaining that her spouse preferred to be called Judith now, offering no further explanation but her tone making it clear none would be forthcoming. "That was uncomfortable," Judith said afterward, hands still shaking slightly. "It was the first of many such conversations," Clara acknowledged. "But it gets easier. Trust me." 3 months into their new reality, Clara came home with a surprise, an emerald green cocktail dress with matching heels. "What's this for?" Judith asked, running her fingers over the luxurious fabric. "My gallery is hosting a special exhibition opening next weekend," Clara explained. "I'd like you to come with me, as Judith." The invitation represented a significant step, appearing as Judith at a professional event where many people knew them as a couple. "Are you sure?" Judith hesitated. "Your colleagues, your clients, are sophisticated art world people who pride themselves on being open-minded," Clara finished. "Besides, I want to show off my beautiful wife." The word wife sent a jolt through Judith. It was the first time Clara had used that term to describe her. "Wife?" she repeated softly. Clara met her gaze steadily. "Yes, because that's who you are to me now, isn't it? Not my husband Gianni, but my wife, Judith." The acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to Judith's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll wear the dress and come to the exhibition." Clara smiled. "And maybe practice walking in those heels before Saturday. They're higher than what you're used to." The gallery opening proved to be a turning point. Clara introduced Judith to colleagues and clients with confident ease, navigating the occasional raised eyebrow with grace. By the end of the evening, Judith found herself engaged in a spirited discussion about Renaissance art techniques with the gallery's most important collector, who seemed more interested in her knowledge than her appearance. "You were magnificent," Clara said on the drive home. "I was so proud watching you tonight." "It felt right," Judith admitted. "For the first time in a public setting, I wasn't constantly thinking about how I looked or sounded. I was just present." "That's all anyone can ask for," Clara said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. To be fully present in their own life. As months turned into a year, Judith's transition became more complete. She began hormone therapy after consultations with specialists, watching with wonder as subtle changes reshaped her body to better match her internal identity. Her professional life evolved too, with a gradual shift toward freelance consulting that allowed her to control her work environment more effectively. Their marriage, rather than fracturing under the pressure of such significant change, seemed to strengthen. The forced honesty of the situation had opened channels of communication that had been closed or limited before. They talked more, listened better, and found new ways to connect. On the anniversary of the day, Clara discovered the red gown. She planned a special dinner at home. Judith arrived in the dining room to find candles lit, fine china set out, and Clara waiting with champagne. "What's all this?" Judith asked, admiring the elegant table setting. "A celebration," Clara replied, handing her a flute of champagne. "1 year of living truthfully." Judith took the glass, emotion tightening her throat. "Has it really been a year?" "It has." Clara raised her glass. "And what a year it's been." They clinked glasses gently, the crystal making a clear, bright sound in the intimate space. "I have something for you," Clara said, reaching into her pocket. She withdrew a small velvet box. Judith took it with a questioning look. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a key. "It's beautiful," she said, lifting it from the box. "It's symbolic," Clara explained. "The key that unlocked your true self, and in many ways, unlocked something in me, too." "In you?" Judith asked, surprised. Clara nodded, taking the necklace to fasten it around Judith's neck. "This year has taught me so much about courage, about authenticity. Watching you become who you were, always meant to be, has inspired me to examine my own life, to consider what parts of myself I might have been keeping locked away." "And what did you find?" "That I'm stronger than I knew. That love is more adaptable than I imagined. That happiness comes in unexpected packages." Clara smiled, her fingers lingering on the necklace. "And that sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other is the space to change. Judith covered Clara's hand with her own. I wouldn't have had the courage without you. You would have found it eventually, Clara said confidently. But I'm glad I could be part of your journey. That night, as they cleared the dinner dishes together in comfortable silence, Judith reflected on the extraordinary path that had led from a hidden red gown to this moment of quiet domestic contentment. The woman she had become, the woman she had always been inside, was no longer a secret self, hidden away in a false wall behind business suits. She was simply herself, lavender pencil skirt, cream blouse, blonde bob, and all, living a life that finally felt authentic in every respect. What are you thinking about? Clara asked, noticing her contemplative expression. About how finding that dress was the best thing that ever happened to us, Judith answered honestly. Clara smiled, passing her a plate to dry. I think you're right, though next time you buy an evening gown, perhaps don't hide it in your gym bag. Next time, Judith promised with a laugh, we'll shop for it together. And they did, many times in the years that followed, building a shared life neither of them could have imagined on that fateful afternoon when a hidden red gown had tumbled into the light, changing everything forever. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!